when it came to your production in social media, I want to put it in the context. I'm sure you probably did other forms of lead generation as well. Was social media complementary to those, or was it distinct and standalone in itself?
Yeah, well, it's actually quite interesting because the main mechanism that I use to grow and build my real estate business and scale it through listing property in high volume was going directly to the consumer. So it was from a form of marketing, telemarketing. And I would prospect 3 hours a day, 6 days a week. And that is effective. I mean, it works. Now there's technology that makes that, a little bit more challenging, but there's ways to do it and be in alignment with the rules. And it's still effective and it's very efficient. The issue with it is that it doesn't scale.
Yeah.
And that it's limited in its capacity, right? So I recognized probably 3 or 4 years ago when I made this transition over to EXP that I understood how to list property in high volume very, very well, inside and out. I did not understand media, and I didn't understand it in the same way that I understood how to list property in high volume. I recognized, though, that it was very important and it was a pattern, right? Tony Robbins lets us know that if you want to produce favorable outcomes, there's a couple skills you have to possess. One is being able to recognize patterns. But then the second is once you recognize them, is have the courage to use them. And I think we're at this unique place, right, where the vast majority of agents understand that media is important, but there's no clear, concise strategy and approach. So what we do is we do what we kind of have been sort of taught to do in a way, which is we're still doing media on the social graph. So I'm old enough and you're old enough to remember that when Facebook came out, it was completely predicated on the social graph. So meaning they would show me, if Brian was my friend, they would show me what you were doing.
That's right.
Well, then TikTok comes around 7 or 8 years ago and they introduced the interest graph. And that's different. Now, what's really cool and why the interest graph is superior to the social graph is because what Aaron thought was cool when he was 20 is different than what he's interested in when he's 40.
That's right.
So that means that it evolves and changes with you, and it only shows you what you're interested in, right? So as a response to this, what we see happening is that Instagram comes out with Reels and YouTube comes out with Shorts. And those are based on the interest graph. So what I see the vast majority of people doing is they're still doing the social graph when it's the interest graph. And it's completely different, right? And to circle back and answer your question, I recognize I didn't understand this. So what I always do when I don't understand something is I sought out a guide. I found a guy who had 6 businesses that do $1 million a month, and his primary client acquisition channel was media. I paid him $25,000 to teach me. So I was on calls. My content creators were on calls with his content creators. We sucked everything out of their brain on specifically how to use these platforms, the difference between short, medium, and long form, the difference between the social graph and the interest graph. And that has resulted in, I went from very little attention on Instagram, about 2,000 followers, to about 60,000 now. Wow. It turned into last year, 1.8 million views on YouTube, 70,000+ hours worth of watch time. So yeah, I learned it after selling real estate in high volume, if that's true. Like once I made the decision to transfer over to EXP, I recognized, hey, with what I was doing as far as attraction, this is like really, really important. So I went down the path of learning it. What I would also propose or suggest is what I've learned now, I help agents, whether they be in our coaching company or people in our organization, apply to generating leads for their real estate business. And it works just the same.
Well, yeah. You said something at the outset too that struck me, and that is in traditional real estate, I would have told you that most of us get on the treadmill of lead generation, right? Whatever our particular form is, FSBOs, expires, open houses, doesn't matter. We get on that treadmill. And until we build and effectively work a database, we're going to stay on that treadmill. The database allows us to take the people that we're meeting, which, by the way, the vast majority of people that we meet through our lead generation efforts are going to be future need people, not immediate need people. Mm-hmm. And it allows us to take those people, put them into an effective system that keeps us top of mind. What I've come to find in these conversations with people like yourself is that social media is an extension of your CRM, so to speak, right? When used effectively, and that then becomes that sort of strategy. Now you use it for attraction, but to your point, this is the same thing for real estate sales. As I'm talking to these social media gurus who are killer agents, and they're using it for that.
Yeah, and I think absolutely 100%. And I also think, so there's some key things that if somebody was watching this, I think to myself, okay, what would be like 3 or 4 things that I could share with you that would get you 80% of the way there?
Okay.
The first is the difference between the social graph and the interest graph. So the vast majority of everybody is posting pictures of their kids and their vacations and what they're doing, and nobody cares. Okay. Nobody. So they're doing that. Yeah. They're doing that wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Now this, and I always find it interesting where I when I'm talking to agents, I'm like, why are you guys posting pictures of you working out? Last time I checked, none of you guys make money from being like, a physical trainer. Like,
Right.
it's just lazy. And it's really people using social as a mechanism to gratify their ego. Like, look at me. You're not actually positioning yourself as a guide to help anybody to solve their problems. So the first is social graph versus interest graph. The second thing I would suggest or propose is everybody should go out and get the book StoryBrand, Building a StoryBrand, and they should read it.
Building a StoryBrand. Okay.
Yeah, because what we don't, his name's Donald Miller.
Donald Miller. Okay.
And I saw Donald Miller speak, and I don't know if I'm sure you've had those moments because education is your thing, where you're in the presence of somebody and you know what they're saying is true. Like, I don't need to debate it in my mind. I looked at my wife, I'm like, this is the way, like a Mandalorian. He knows exactly what he's talking about. So I studied it and began teaching it, to others and implementing it. And the proof is in the progress. I'm seeing what's happening for me. So what we don't recognize is that we live in a world where distribution's free. Distribution there used to be gatekeepers of distribution. So like, what would it take for you to get on TV? Well, you had to be exceptionally talented and you had to be super lucky and know somebody. I don't need either one of those to be on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right. And the gatekeepers to get on radio was like very difficult. And now I can have a podcast. Right. So distribution's free. And there are also mechanisms to tell stories. And narrative is a construct of reality. We learn because we have the good fortune at EXP to have access to, the Amplify Your Influence, Rene Rodriguez, and he tells us about frames and he tells us about narrative being a construct of reality. Well, these platforms allow you to tell stories. And as such, we need to learn how to become better storytellers. So if you study StoryBrand, like we've been telling stories for thousands of years. And as humans, it's the only technology that we possess that allows us to captivate attention for extended periods of time. It's the only thing that we have. And there's a clear best practices for storytelling because we've been telling them for so long. And it follows this trajectory, right? Or this kind of pattern. There is a hero who has a problem that they cannot solve themselves. Because if they could, there would be no story. They find a guide. That guide gives them a plan, calls them to action because heroes don't take action on their own accord. They need to be prompted externally. Then the hero then uses the plan. They get what they want. They avoid what they don't want. So let me demonstrate what I'm talking to you. So like what I'm sharing with you. So Harry Potter, who's the hero? Harry. Who's the guide? Dumbledore. Star Wars, Luke Skywalker. Who's the hero? Luke.
Yeah.
Who's the guide? Obi-Wan. So every story, every book, every movie you've ever watched follows this. So what I find super interesting, okay, is going back to social graph versus interest graph and the way people are doing it. If you think about it, who's the second weakest person in the story? The first weakest is the villain. So like Voldemort didn't even have a body. But who's the second weakest person in the story? The hero. Does Harry know that he's the best wizard on the planet?
No idea.
Does he even know how to use magic? Nope. Does Luke Skywalker know that he's the one that's going to save the universe? Nope. Does he even know how to use the Force? Does he know how to use a lightsaber? Nope. Does he make mistakes all the time? Yes. Who's the strongest person in the whole character, in the whole character and the whole story? Who's the strongest? The guide. We actually root for the guide. So what I find super interesting, and this is a major takeaway for everybody: one, social graph versus interest graph. Two, you guys are all positioning yourself as the hero, which is the second weakest person in the story and not the guide. So all of your media should be designed around you being a guide to help people to solve their problems. Because when heroes, let's say Brian's scrolling, according to Google, you touch your phone 150 times a day.
Huh.
Text messages, checking your calendar, emails, whatever. And a small portion of that, maybe like an hour, sometimes more, will be on social platforms.
Okay.
So when you're going through and you see another hero, because you view yourself as the hero in your own story. Yep, we all do. So when you see another hero, do you know what goes through your mind? Oh, Aaron's a hero just like me. I wish I could stop and listen to what he has to say. I'm too busy trying to find a guide to help me to solve my problems. And we all have problems. We have financial problems, marital stuff, spiritual stuff, money stuff. We're all trying to solve our problems. So the second major thing that I see people doing that's completely wrong is they're making themselves the hero. They're not positioning themselves as a guide to help anybody to solve their problems. An example would be, let's say in the context of selling real estate, instead of like, here's a home I just sold. Who's the hero?
Yeah.
Yeah, me. Me with the little key. Who's the hero? Me, right? Instead, hey, here's a homeowner who had this problem. Who's the hero? The homeowner. They didn't know what they were going to do or how they could solve that problem. We connected. Who's the guide? We use this 3-step plan. 1, 2, 3. Here's the hero getting what they want and avoiding what they don't want. So if you want to have a confidential conversation about your home, DM me the word sell. Now I'm doing it in story branded format, positioning me as a guide to help them to solve their problems. And then people will reach out to you, not because you post pictures of yourself working out.
Love it. So let's talk about attraction, since that's your particular bent with social media. First off, social media just could be a variety of platforms. What are the platforms that you rely on most?
Yep. So here's what I would suggest is like understanding the platforms and what they're for and how to use them. So you have to build an ecosystem of attention.
Okay.
Short form, medium, and long. And these platforms help you to do it. So the way I describe short form, that's 60 seconds or less. And what that's like is like sitting in a room with billions of people and going like this. Hey, hey, hey. Why would anybody want to stop scrolling and pay attention to you? Okay, that's short form. That's Reels, that's YouTube Shorts, that's TikTok. Medium form is, let's say, a 10 to 20 minute video that's on YouTube. Long form is what we're doing now. It's like an hour, and that usually lives on YouTube. So you want to build an ecosystem of attention. What I've learned is that short form, the goal is to walk them down the path from short to medium to long. And here's the reason why, is they've done studies that show if somebody consumes 15 hours worth of content, there's a very high degree of probability they will engage with you in some capacity, in a business capacity. Well, in order to get that on short form content, they would need to watch 5,000 pieces of content from start to finish. In order to get that on long form or medium form, even if let's say I have 30 videos, they watch half that are an hour long, I'll still get there. So the idea is you want to create this ecosystem of attention. I also would suggest or propose, because these platforms have the capacity to like deplatform you. They feel like it. So I think being overly reliant on one is actually quite vulnerable. So I would propose be where the attention is. And I would suggest short, which is Instagram, primarily Reels, TikTok for short as well, YouTube Shorts as well, with the goal and objective of getting them to the long form, which is YouTube.
Okay. So you're building a funnel toward it. And I like the idea about having a variety of platforms, because algorithms change, platforms get banned by governments, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I think that makes all the sense in the world. And so for you, then the goal is to drive them ultimately to a YouTube longer form video.
Yeah, because what I think is true is that the best way to show somebody you can help them is to help them for free.
Yeah.
The most scalable way to do that is media.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you think about this, you have to get like really clear on who your avatar is. Let's say your avatar is a buyer and a seller. Great. Well, what do they want to know about? Not what do I want to shoot content about? What do they want to know about? And how can I shoot it in a format, create it in a format that's story branded, that positions me as a guide, not as a hero, to help them solve their problems. Create that ecosystem that takes them from short to medium to long, right? And then the same thing is true. Is equally as applicable to attraction. So we know that despite the fact that we gave out a bunch of money in revenue share, only 12% of the company participated in it. So that means the other 78% want to know about one thing and one thing only. They want to do more deals. So they want to know how to convert at higher levels. They want to know what lead sources are better and all of that. And what I think is true as well is where we are in our cycle of growth as a company. We went 10 years with zero competition. That's fantastic. Amazon went 7 years with no competition. That's unbelievable. So in that environment, sending people videos explaining what the model looks like, or perhaps picking up the phone and calling people, it was more effective in that environment. In an environment now where we're the incumbent, we're the mature, there's 66 models that claim to look like us. Shouting down models is a loser's game. So instead, you should try to become the type of person that somebody would say yes to without even knowing what you're doing. The best way to do that is to, again, the best way to show them you can help them is by helping them for free and equipping them with what they need. Specifically, let's say it's agents on how to do deals in higher volume. And if it's a different avatar, like buyers and sellers, what they need in order to accomplish their goals and objectives.
You know, I talked to Hallie McCrory up in the Dallas area, and when you look at her metrics from Instagram, her viewers are her, right? I mean, like age range, gender, all of it. And so she just talks to what she loves. She talks to what she knows, and all of a sudden her tribe shows up.
Yeah. So what's wild is, to that point, like I know from looking at my metrics, 70 to 80% of everybody who watches my content is a man between the ages of 18 and 45.
Which I'm going to guess you. I'm not going to ask your age, but I'm going to guess.
Hey, we're grown-ups. I'm 44. So, yeah, but like what's wild is when I'm at events or whatever, do you know who's surrounding me? The avatar, 18 to 45-year-olds that come up to me like, hey, I've been watching your content. Cool. Helpful? I hope it is. Now, so it's like knowing who your avatar is, knowing what they're interested in. And what I would propose, if you think about that, there's multiple levels to that, but let's say like buyers or sellers, like let's say that client I was talking to you about that I coach in Massachusetts, and she's tripled her business, right? And I told her, I'm like, you want to become the local mayor and the digital mayor. So we've been intentional and purposeful in both areas. And what I told her is like, yeah, you want to become a guide that you want to position yourself as a guide to help people to solve their problems, and they'll start reaching out to you. And that's precisely what's been happening over time, but it took time to accomplish that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so, you know, what I would suggest to people is like, like in terms of her avatar, a lot of people move from she knows where they come from. They're all moving from like this area in New York and this area here and this area there. She knows who they are. So what I told her is like, let's think about it. Like, let's go to a whiteboard and be like, okay, every single time that you meet with one of those people, what questions do they ask you? They ask me about this. They ask me about that. They ask me about this. I'm like, you know what's fantastic? She's like, what? They're telling you what to create content on. So we write it all down. Okay, cool. Now your job is to go create content in a story branded format to answer their questions. And then what will happen is I told her you can create this video series, let's say of like, you know, how to buy a home if you're coming from out of the area, which most of our people do. Before you meet with them for their first meeting to go show properties, I'd say, hey, Mr. Ellington, in preparation for our time together, you know what I think would be helpful or useful is if you watch this video series, I'm going to email it to you and text it to you. So that way you're fully equipped and fully prepared, and it can answer a lot of the questions that you'll have that we find that folks who move from out of the area are interested in. And it'll just make our time as effective and efficient as possible. So if you got some time, just check it out. And then it becomes a tool. So not only is it a lead generator, but it helps to be a tool to like make it, you know, more effective and efficient. So I'm clear that in terms of attraction, my avatar is two people. agents doing 0 to 100 deals. They want systems, processes, lead gen, conversion. That's what they need to know about. My second avatar are agents that do a lot of deals but have no time. And they want to learn, how do I reclaim time? How do I do more with less? How do I get time freedom and location freedom? And I can teach them media. I can teach them attraction. I can teach them, the investment side of things. So it's being clear on who those two avatars are, and then create content that they want, not you. Not what I feel like, I feel like pontificating on today. Like, no, what specifically does the avatar want to know about?
That's smart. All right. I know we're at time here. So thank you for doing this. This has been awesome. I really appreciate it. And how can people get in touch with you, Aaron?
Yeah, super easy. Just at Aaron Novello on all of those platforms. And I look forward to the opportunity to interact and perhaps be a guide and be of assistance in some way.
All right. Check him out. Check out his channels and then talk to him online as well. Aaron, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you.
All right, there you go. Brian Ellington, always bringing the fire, asking the questions, pulling out the stuff and the secret sauce recipes. Thank you, Aaron Novello, for that. Appreciate all the content that you added. And I'm sure you guys now have something you can add into your business and take your business to the next level this year. So thank you very much for that. We appreciate it.